Good morning, everyone. Happy Thursday. This is Carol White welcoming you to this week's episode of When Life Needs a Detox. I have to apologize, everybody. For some reason, my camera is not working today. I don't know what happened. I'm still trying to figure this out. So give me a couple minutes. Maybe I can just get it to click on. I don't know what's going on here, but it should be working. It's always working. But as I said, it is Thursday, May 28th. And apparently there is an issue with my camera. And I don't see, there's my camera. Okay, okay, we've got error messages. One has to close before I use the other. Hang on just a minute. And that still isn't working for me. But my camera is up and rolling. I don't know what's going on. There's so much that I'm not understanding here. Okay, we're going to have to just go with it. I'm glad my one person is here. I appreciate that. Today, we're just going to have to go for it. That's all right. This week's topic on When Life Needs Detox is the story of George Floyd, an anatomy of a police murder. Now, this past Monday, Mr. George Floyd was killed while in police custody as a result of having the knee of Officer Derek Chavin pressed down on his neck and Officer Chavin's refusal to release that hold when Mr. Floyd begged for air. This incident was spread far and wide, and it has caused anger, frustration, and sadness to the point where protests have been held and they've become violent because people have just had enough. Now, the mayor of Minneapolis, Mr. Jacob Frey, has called for the arrest of Officer Derek Chavin. Now, while I consider this to be an appropriate response and the appropriate act, I do feel that he has fallen short. I have viewed the original, or rather the first video that came out showing Officer Chavin with his knee in the neck of Mr. Floyd. Y'all have to forgive me. This upsets me so. But I saw the video where Officer Chavin had his knee on the neck of Mr. Floyd. But I also saw the rest of the video where not only does Officer Chavin have his knee in Mr. Floyd's neck, there is a second officer with his knees on Mr. Chavin's back, and a third officer with his knees pinning down Mr. Floyd's legs. I've been a police officer for 29 years. I retired about 5 years ago. But I can tell you this with all assurance, that the techniques used by those three officers have never been taught to them in any police academy, ever. No officer currently working today has been authorized to use the techniques that those officers used on that man. We're not taught those techniques because they're likely to cause serious injury and or death. That's why they're not used. An appropriate action would have been Once he was cuffed and after he collapsed, because he wasn't fighting, he collapsed, was to sit him up and wait for medical assistance. But you laid him down flat, put your knees in his neck, his back, and pinned his legs. He couldn't breathe. And that was all he was saying. I couldn't breathe. I can't breathe. Officer, I can't breathe. And Officer Chavin is there. Oh, yeah, I know you can't breathe. I bet you can't breathe, bro. He was so caustic and so unfeeling. And he seemed to take pleasure in this man's discomfort, his pain, and it just made no sense to me. Now, we all know of the fight or flight reaction. You got the man's throat constricted because you're leaning on it full force with your knee. You got a second officer on his back. This is now constricting his lungs. He can't breathe. He's trying to decide if he wants to move his head from side to side to get some kind of air. And every time he moved his head, Officer Chavin dug in his knee. Now, like I said, it is appropriate that Officer Chavin be arrested for murder, but they need to take it even further and arrest the two officers that also kneeled on his back and kneeled on his legs. They are just as responsible for the murder of George Floyd. Now, this isn't going to make me popular with a whole lot of officers. And quite frankly, I don't care. Because there are just as many or even more officers that do not stand or condone these actions, and they're openly stated. You see, the actions of these officers have the direct effect on the ability of hardworking, honest, earnest police officers who come to do the job the right way for the right reasons. And here's the thing, the public does not view the police as individuals. Rather, we're seen more as a conglomerate, part of a symbiont. The police move together, think the same, and will behave in the same way as the worst officers that they've seen and heard of. Just as Blacks, African Americans, have to deal with the preconceived notions perpetuated by the criminality of a small percentage of our race, so it is with police officers and our criminal counterparts. Now, it's just time to address the elephant in the room: race. You had 3 white officers kill a Black man in broad daylight on a city street, and it was recorded. Let's just break this down. You had 3 white officers kill a Black man on a city street in broad daylight, and it was recorded. You even had the person recording beg for the man's life, and the police ignored it. The man is begging for his life himself, and the police ignore it. Now, my personal observation of this is twofold. You know, it's just shameful, first of all, that in the recent years, it seems like it's just open season on Black men. And really, if you think about it, it's been open season on Black men for centuries. But it is becoming more prevalent now, almost as prevalent as it was in Jim Crow. Only they're not doing it at night. They're doing it in broad daylight, and they're hiding behind a badge. You're having white officers just killing Black men, and seemingly they're getting away with it. Now, my personal observation, as I was speaking of before, is twofold. Number one, these white officers in question are either insecure and or they're scared. And number two, the job of a police officer is a calling as opposed to just being a job. Now, police officers are called not to administer justice. That's not our job. That's not what we've been hired to do. We've been hired to enforce the law without prejudice or interpretation. It is not the job of the officer to judge the people he comes in contact with, but to assess the facts of the situation and handle the situation lawfully and effectively. Unfortunately, this is not always the case. Preconceived notions, myths, and personal biases enter the equation. Now, for some white officers, Blacks are not seen as human beings, and therefore they're not worthy of being treated with humanity. Blacks, African Americans, are seen merely as animals that need to be controlled, hence the brutality and the deaths. And it's for this reason that many of these white officers that hold this mentality will choose to work in predominantly Black areas. Now, I don't say this cavalierly and I don't say it lightly. As I stated earlier, I was a Chicago police officer for 29 years. And I can proudly say that I have worked with some of the best men and women, Black, white, Hispanic, Asian, throughout my career. On the downside, I can also say that I witnessed firsthand the racism, hatred, and prejudice of the very officers that I previously described. And I witnessed that this behavior was not only tolerated by, but encouraged by certain supervisors. See, this goes so much deeper than what's caught on film. You have basically a society in the police department that says it's okay to do what you did. Now, really, it's not okay, but if you do it, we'll find a way to cover you, provided you're white. The only thing now is, when I got on the job, it was 1986. There were no such things as phone cameras, okay? So a lot of what happened was never recorded. So it was their word versus the police. And guess who always won? The police. It happened that way. But now we are in the age of cell phones with cameras. Shoot, the iPhone watches with cameras. There are eyes on the police. But the police have still been told, you are the ultimate and you do whatever it is you feel is right. But here's the thing. They don't just give us a uniform and a gun and a badge and throw us out there. They train us. We have to go to classes. We take classes in law. We take classes in self-defense. We take psychology classes, how to deal with people. We are taught what it is that we are supposed to do, what we're not supposed to do. They drill into us with the Chicago Police Department. We have a set of directives, and I kid you not, these directives took up 2 4-inch binders. We have department orders, special orders, department notices, special notices, special orders. We had so much stuff to learn, and we were responsible for it all. And the one thing that we've always been told is you do what you want to do out there, but you make sure you can handle the consequence. Because if you're going to act like a criminal, you're eventually going to be treated like a criminal. And this is what is going on now. There is a criminality within the police department that is now being shown. And for some reason, people don't understand. I'm going to say this, not just people, the police. Some police don't understand that this microscope has gotten larger and it takes in more information. George Floyd was killed by history. He was killed by preconceived notions. He was killed by actions that have secretly been applauded by police departments until they can't applaud them anymore. It is shameful. And to the family of George Floyd, you have my deepest sympathy and prayers. For the men and women police officers that truly answer the calling of being the police, I salute you and I pray for you as well. Because it is hard to get out there and do your job the way it's supposed to be done. But these are the men and women that I'm telling you right now, just as I had to do. You had to make up your mind. Do you want to be the kind of officer that at the end of the day can look in the mirror and say, I did the best I could? Or do you want to be an officer that has to hide from who they are? And that, for me, is my personal observation on Derek Chavin and the other Derek Chavins posing as police officers and lurking within these departments around the country or around the world. And I got a message for y'all. If you cannot get your insecurities, your fears, and your misconceptions about Black people in check, law enforcement is not the job for you. The objective of any police department is to protect and serve all of its citizens, Black, white, brown, yellow, red, pink with purple polka dot. I don't care. Your job is to serve and protect. You don't just get to serve and protect people you would rather associate with. And there's no shame in you all turning in your badges and finding employment more suited to your mentality. Although, quite frankly, I can't imagine what jobs are suited toward the mentality of a racist. Y'all, I did not mean to go there, but I had to, because that's how I'm feeling. Again, y'all, I'm just going to end it right here. I can't say anymore. I do apologize for the fact that my camera is not working. We will do another live, or at least we'll try to do another live sometime today. But as of right now, I'm just going to sign off. I love y'all to the moon and back. This is Carol White, and this is When Life Needs a Detox. I'm going to see you next week, okay? Bye-bye.